We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another film session edition of the Glory UGA podcast here on YouTube, where today I'm going to break down for you just how the Georgia defense was able to dominate the Texas offense last weekend en route to a 30-15 win over the number one team in the country. But first, this episode is brought to you by our great friends at MyBookie. Make sure to check them out for all your betting needs this college football season. And if you enjoy this brand of hardcore, in-depth Georgia football coverage, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now for a lot more content just like this. Like the video, comment, all that great stuff. And most importantly, make sure to check out the Glory UGA podcast wherever you get your podcast for a ton of coverage designed for you guys, the most diehard Georgia fans out there on planet Earth. We run 4 episodes a week during the season, and we never go dark. We're running episodes all year long covering the Georgia football team and really Georgia athletics at large, so make sure to check that out wherever you get your podcast. But all right, moving along here today. As you might imagine, in the aftermath of a win like that, after all, it's not every day that your program defeats the number one team in the country on the road by 2 touchdowns. So when you win a game like that, as you might imagine, our DMs, our inbox here at the Glory UGA podcast have, shall we say, been blowing up over the past couple of days with questions about how this Georgia team, that, let's be real, guys, let's call it what it is, how this Georgia team that had been left for dead by many within the Georgia football fan base after that perceived lackluster win over Mississippi State leading into the Texas game, how is that Georgia team able to come back from the dead some way, somehow, to knock off the number one team in the country on the road? And the number one team that has looked almost invulnerable all year long. No one's come close to beating them. Well, they also haven't played anybody, but no one want to talk about that, right? How is this Georgia team, this Georgia defense in particular, able to hold a Texas offense that came into this game last weekend averaging 495 yards per game, 7.25 yards per play, and 43 points per game? How was a Georgia defense that looked as bad as it did in the second half of that game against Mississippi State, giving up a ton of yards through the air to a freshman quarterback and the worst team in the SEC? I think it's pretty clear by now that it is Mississippi State. How were they able to hold that Texas offense to a measly 259 total yards, 3.4 yards per play, and 15 points? And let's be real, 7 of those points were gifted to them off of that ridiculous overturned call. We got the interception, and the ball was inside the 10-yard line when they get the football. How was that Georgia team that struggled, quote unquote, against Mississippi State? We know that struggled against Alabama. How were they able to come up with that kind of performance on the road in a massive matchup between the number 1 and number 5 team in the country? We got a lot of questions along those lines. And when our listeners ask here at the Glory UGA podcast, we kind of like to deliver. So what I did is I went back and I've gone through a couple of rewatches of the game now. I apologize for this episode being a day or 2 late, but I was at the game getting back. There's a lot to get caught up on just with life. So it took me a day or 2 to go back and get all the clips I needed to get. But here we are today, putting it together for you guys. But I pulled together a bunch of clips, a series of clips to illustrate to you exactly why and how this Georgia defense was able to thoroughly dominate the Texas offense the way that it did on Saturday night. In trying to answer that question, how was Georgia able to do that to this Texas offense that has been able to do basically whatever it wanted to pretty much everyone that has played through the first half of its schedule? And the reality is the answer to that question is multifaceted. It's not just one thing. There's not just one thing you point to say, yep, that's it, that's the reason. The reality is there are a series of interrelated factors that contributed to this dominant defensive performance by the Georgia Bulldogs. And I have boiled it down to 3 primary factors, 3 big factors here that accounted for Georgia's crazy impressive performance against Texas last weekend. Number 1, a clearly enhanced natural pass rush where Georgia was not having to dial up manufactured pressure to get after Texas quarterbacks. Number 2, a higher quantity of snaps defensively played in tighter press man coverage, which I've been calling for a couple of weeks. The video I did last week was detailing why we needed to do that. And hey, it's great to see that our coaches, they saw it too. And they came out and they employed new coverage strategies. I shouldn't say new, but they went back to playing what Georgia typically does on the outside, which is that tighter press man coverage. And then finally, wrapping it up, we just went back to playing that classic dominant Georgia run defense, which we haven't really seen this year outside of maybe week 1 against Clemson. So let's now go to the tape and illustrate all 3 factors and explain how each one of them contributed to that dominant defensive performance against Texas. All right, guys, we're going to start with the most obvious aspect of Georgia's defensive dominance against the Texas offense last weekend, which of course had to be the way that the Dogs were able to just get after the Texas quarterbacks all night long, both Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. But it was more than just the ability to pressure the Texas quarterbacks. It's how Georgia was able to pressure the Texas quarterbacks that was so key to this dominant defensive performance. Because what Georgia was able to do was consistently, all night long, get pressure with 4 and even 3-man rushes against that Texas offensive line, which, by the way, I do think is the best offensive line that Georgia has faced and that Georgia will face throughout the regular season. This is unique for Georgia this year. We've had trouble generating a natural pass rush. We've had to manufacture pressure, which has left us vulnerable on the back end at times. But you see a guy like Mykel Williams return, you get healthier on the defensive line, all of a sudden, this natural pass rush against the best offensive line we've played all year becomes flat out scary for the opposing offense. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Got a couple of clips. The first one here is inside of almost the 11-yard line. Early in this game, early second quarter, you got Jalen Walker right here, who's going to beat Kelvin Banks Jr., who right now is getting a lot of love as a potential future top 10 draft pick in next year's NFL draft. But he had a tough night. I can count, I think, at least 3 sacks off the top of my head that he surrendered last night after giving up, I think, 1 sack in his career. I think that's the number coming into this game. But we'll see Jalen Walker here doing what Jalen Walker does, just doing nasty things to a left tackle, getting after the quarterback. And that's a hard-fought sack, but he got there. Now, this next one, we got Mykel Williams. Welcome back, Mykel Williams. And what you're going to see here, if you go back actually to that last clip, let's go back there real quick, just to show you again, Georgia's not bringing pressure here. This is a 4-man rush. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what were we able to do? 2 high safety shell, right? But it's only a 4-man rush. You go to the next play here. This one, even more impressive, because this is going to be a 3-man rush. 1, 2, 3. Boom. And Mykel Williams down here at the bottom of the screen is going to get home. Again, once again, on one of the best offensive tackles that Georgia's going to face all year, able to get home on that guy. So let's see him beat Kelvin Banks Jr. This is a great play by Mykel, because Quinn Ewers does a decent job of stepping up in the pocket there, kind of feeling the pressure to a degree. But Mykel, a vet now, old crafty vet, it's like, all right, maybe I can't get home and actually get him down, but I can reach out with my paw, knock that ball loose, get credit for a sack, force fumble. And that's huge, guys. Forcing turnovers, that's one of the things that Georgia's had issues with this year. We've committed too many turnovers. We haven't been able to force enough. And a big part of the reason why we haven't been able to force enough turnovers is we're not getting pressure. We're not getting pressure on the quarterback. If you're not getting pressure on the quarterback, they're able to just sit back and deliver the football. It's hard to force turnovers when, as we'll see in a little bit here, especially when you're sitting back playing that soft zone, bail technique coverage at times. All right, once again here, another 3-man rush. Now, Jalen Walker's going to get credit for this sack. And I love Jalen Walker. Love the guy. He's my favorite player on this team. But the credit here goes to Damon Wilson Jr. So you got to get one, Mykel, TID, Damon Wilson Jr. Damon Wilson's going to get the pressure right here. He's going to split the tackle and guard. And he's going to force Quinn Ewers to escape the pocket. And what Jalen Walker's doing right here, he's playing what we call a mirror technique in our defensive lingo. You can call it a spy if you want. We just call it a mirror with our defense. And his job, as soon as the quarterback breaks the pocket, it's automatic trigger. And you got Jalen Walker doing that. You've seen him do this year. You saw him do it some in the second half against Alabama, late in the game against Kentucky as well. We did a lot with him last year against Alabama in the second half of that game and all throughout that year. But this is a scary pass rushing group, by the way. If you look at this, you got Mykel Williams right here. You got Jalen Walker mirroring the quarterback. Damon Wilson Jr. is really coming on in his sophomore year as a pass rusher. And this is TID playing zero tech. That's a 5 tech who's been a great pass rusher for us in the absence of Mykel Williams. But we know Mykel's a more dynamic edge rusher than TID is. So you still want him on the field because he does give us a lot of pass rush. So where do you put him? You put him on the center. And you typically, I know Jake Majors is a good center, but you like TID match up against just about any center in the country in a pass rush situation. So if we can throw that group out there, whew, that's a scary proposition for a lot of offensive lines. Again, only a 3-man rush there. And Jalen cleaning it all up. Yet again, 3-man rush. This one, Damon Wilson. Now, this one, he made the play on the last one, didn't get credit for the sack. This one, he will get credit for the sack. We're playing the same technique here, right? So 1, 2, 3-man rush, and you got Jalen Walker sitting here mirroring the quarterback. If Arch Manning is flushed out of the pocket, he triggers, he makes a play right there. That's our mirror technique. But didn't have to, because this time, Damon Wilson gets all the way home. And we just ate the right side of that offensive line alive. Ate them alive. And even good old Chaz Chandler, who, by the way, has been playing a lot better this year, he gets in on the fun. Again, right side. This is a guy who had 0 sacks last year. He's actually been much better as a pass rusher for us this year. Great use of his hands here. This is the final play. This is the last gasp effort by Texas. Pass falls incomplete on 4th down. Turnover on downs. Game freaking over. But once again, look at the story here. 1, 2, 3-man rush. So 4, even 3-man rushes consistently all night long. Georgia was able to either get home or at least pressure the quarterback into hurried throws and affect what he was trying to do. So that's part 1. That's the first element in the explanation of why this Georgia defense was able to have so much success against this Texas offense. But you can't stop there. That's a part of it. It's a big part of it. But now we have to ask ourselves a question, why was Georgia all of a sudden a team that had 11 sacks through the first 6 games of the year, able to put up 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss in one game against the best offensive line that we'd faced to this point? It kind of defies logic, right? So how do you account for that? Well, number one, yes, getting Mykel Williams back certainly helps. You have Mykel out there. Now, all of a sudden, you can't really slide pressure towards Jalen Walker, because if you do that, you leave Mykel one-on-one. Somebody is going to be left one-on-one, especially when you got Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, and Damon Wilson Jr. on the field, and you throw in TID for good measure. Somebody's getting left one-on-one, and you like whoever it is that gets left one-on-one, you kind of like their chances to win that matchup more often than not. That's part of it, getting healthy. Sure, Warren Brinson also giving us some push from the interior, played really well for us in this game against both the run and the pass. But it's more than just that. I did an episode last week, another film session episode. Go back and check it out if you haven't already. Some of you, I'm sure, have already seen it. And what I did is broke down why Georgia had so many issues in the second half of that Mississippi State game defending the Mississippi State pass game. And even taking it back to the Auburn game the week prior to that and going all the way back to the Alabama game, in particular, the first half of the Alabama game. And what I showed you guys is, yeah, sure, our guys in the secondary, cornerbacks in particular, aren't making enough plays on the ball when plays are there to be made. That was part of the problem. But another huge part of the problem that nobody was really talking about is the coverages that we were playing. We weren't really giving those guys, Dalen Everett, Janelle Aguero, Julian Humphrey, we weren't giving those guys chances to make plays in the ball with what we were asking them to do from a coverage standpoint. We were playing a ton of off coverage, bail technique stuff, some soft cover 3 zones, some soft quarters coverage, bail technique stuff, and we're gifting teams free access throws, playing literally 8-9 yards off the ball at times and just giving them first downs, conceding first downs and not even remotely contesting the throw. And I'll show you some of those clips later on in this film session episode. But I told you last week when talking about that had to change against Texas. Texas doesn't have these big, tall, dynamic receivers. They don't have these guys that can go up and win a bunch of 50-50 contested balls. They had one receiver in Ryan Wingo who's over 6 foot tall, one guy over 195 pounds. These are kind of receivers that you need to get up in their face and play tighter press man coverage. If you sit back in that soft cover 3 zone, the soft quarters coverage, bell technique stuff, you're playing directly into their hands. You're allowing them to do exactly what they want to do. What they want to do offensively is get the ball into the hands of those smaller but shiftier, quicker, elusive, twitchier guys in space and let them go to work. Get the ball into Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden's hands in space and let those guys go pick up yards after the catch. There's a reason why Quinn Ewers only had 9% of his throws coming this week 20 or more yards down the field. There's a reason why they're throwing such a high percentage of throws behind the line of scrimmage, because those are the receivers they have. And if we played off the ball the way we did against Mississippi State in the second half, the way we did against Alabama in the first half of that game, the way we did at times against Auburn, we were going to allow them to just matriculate down the field and drop 40 plus on us. We had to come out and play tighter press man coverage. And you know what? The coaching staff saw the same things that I was telling you guys on tape a week ago. And let's look at it right here. Dalen Everett, right there. Press man coverage, physical, in your face. Malachi Starks. I'm going to show you some clips in a minute here. Against Mississippi State, the safeties were playing at sticks. Now we're cutting that space in half. We're reducing the space, and he's playing off the line of scrimmage. So you can't get up and press him when he's playing the slot like that, but you can reduce the space and force them to make a throw into a tighter window, to make a tougher contested catch. At least give your DBs a chance to contest a throw. And you're going to see it right here. What this is going to allow us to do is get after the quarterback. This is how these two elements work together. I already showed you this clip, right? Jalen Walker, four-man rush, getting after Quinn Ewers. But let's talk about why Jalen Walker was able to get after him. When you play in the face of receivers like that, you play the tighter press man coverage, you're not giving them free access throws. When you're playing, like if Malachi Starks was aligned at the sticks here, Quinn Ewers sees that pre-snap. He knows automatically where he's going with the football. He's going to get the snap, one step, release. It's pitch and catch. He knows exactly where he's going with the football. And if you wonder why Georgia only had 11 sacks through the first 6 games, it has 7 in this game, well, part of it, sure, is the health of Mykel Williams and the other guys on the defensive line. But the other part of it is when you give teams free access throws with the coverages that you're playing, the defensive line does not have time to get home. The pass rush does not have time to actually affect the quarterback. But here, when you reduce space like that, you're going to, number one, disrupt the timing between the receiver and the quarterback. And number two, the quarterback doesn't automatically know pre-snap, I'm going here. He now actually has to go through progressions, and that takes more time. Therefore, giving your pass rush more time to get the quarterback. So let's count it here. Let's count how many seconds that it takes Jalen Walker to get home. Now, he gets home, great effort, but it's not immediate. So here we go. Snap, go. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. 5 seconds. That's a coverage stat. Great job by Jalen Walker to keep fighting. That is a coverage sack. We weren't getting coverage sacks prior to this game, guys, because we were playing too far off receivers and giving them free access throws. That changed against Texas, and it really, really benefited our pass rush. Here again, let's see it right here. You can see at the top, Julian Humphrey pressed up, man coverage. Dan Everett pressed up, tight press man coverage. And what is this going to allow us to do? Contest the football, which we weren't doing against Mississippi State. We weren't even putting the guys in position to contest footballs. And look, I know they've given up some big explosive plays in the pass game at times this year, Alabama, obviously. But by and large, when given opportunities to play press man coverage, play this tighter coverage, they've been successful. In the first half against Mississippi State, we were allowing them to play more coverage like this. And what do? They shut down Mississippi State's pass game for the most part. Second half, not so much, because we're playing off coverage way, way more than we were in the first half. And this is another example here. Now, could they have hit this throw? Sure. But this is a tougher throw. When you play the press man coverage, they're going to beat you sometimes. But you're also going to force them to put the ball on the money, drop some dimes, and force them to make some tough contested catches. Now, we're at the 2-minute warning in the second half. And once again, you can see Julian Humphrey pressed up. This is your Corey Thomas in for Jalen Aguero. You've got Dalen Everett right here pressed up in the line of scrimmage. And yeah, they're going to make this catch, but it required just a ridiculous catch. And this is just a poor effort by Dalen Everett to make a play on the ball. But you're giving your receivers, your DBs, a chance to make a play. And there's one more element I like about this. Against Alabama, in the first half, the game plan was horrific. Part of the reason it was so bad is we brought pressure against Jalen Milroe, but we were playing that soft off coverage behind it. So, yeah, you're bringing pressure, but you can't get home because Jalen Milroe sees pre-snap. Even he can see that, oh, yeah, well, they're playing 10 yards off my guy. They're playing the sticks. Pre-snap, let's just catch the ball and go there. Easy. I mean, Jalen Milroe could do that all day long, which he did in the first half. Well, this game, we learned our lesson. We're bringing pressure. We're bringing 6 on this. But we're pressed up. We're saying, all right, you might be able to complete a ball down the field on us, maybe if you go over the top, because we have no safety help over here over the top. There's no safety there. Maybe you can complete that pass. But we're betting that we're going to get to you before you're able to do that. And we do flush a pocket here. This is just a good effort by Quinn Ewers to escape the pressure. And he is actually pretty good outside the pocket. And it's just a lucky catch. Let's be real. Dalen's right there. Got to make that play. So now, as promised, I want to go back and contrast that, how we were playing that tighter press man coverage against Texas far more often than we had in previous games. Let's go contrast that with what we saw against Mississippi State in the second half of that game, which left everyone just freaking out after that game. So let's look right here. This is in the second half, which is when they were lighting us up with the pass. Look, this ball's going to be completed. This guy, I think this is Mario Craver. Look where KJ's playing. He's playing literally on the sticks. He's giving him 10 yards of cushion. All you have to do is run a slant right here, and there's no way that KJ, as talented and as athletic as he is, he cannot make a play on the ball because we're not putting him in a position to be able to contest that throw. And even a true freshman quarterback can sit there pre-step and say, oh yeah, well, he's giving me 10 yards cushion. We're going right here. It's easy. Even guys who have no experience playing the position can do that. You're making it too easy on them. And that's what we did all during that second half against Mississippi State. And then we can go all the way back now to Alabama. First half of that game. Game plan, absolutely horrific. Look right here. Look at the cushion. So we're kind of showing man coverage at the snap here, but as soon as the ball snapped, Dalen opens his hips. Everett opens his hips, and he's playing that bail technique stuff, and Ryan Williams is going to catch the football with like 3 or 4 yards of cushion here and then go to work in space. It's too easy. We could not come into this game doing that. Here's another one. Jalen Aguero playing a soft zone. Pitch and catch at Kendrick Law. Guy's really good with the ball in his hands after the catch. We're allowing him to do with it what they wanted to do with him. This one is, this is the tight end, the bottom of the screen here. Again, very, very soft zone coverage. Got to make a tackle. Couldn't make the tackle. That's still not as huge of a game to make a tackle, but too much space. And this is the most egregious one of all. So this is actually Daniel Harris right here. He's not quite giving him 10 yards of cushion. He's giving about 8 yards of cushion, but at the snap, he's going to bail. It's like a deep third here. You're going to see when the tight end makes the catch, Harris is not even in the screen. Look at this guy. So he's giving him, at the catch, he's got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 yards of cushion. I could literally go out there and complete that pass. We were making it way too easy on opposing offenses. Against Texas, we said, screw it. We're going to get up in their face. We're going to make them complete really tough throws and catches, contested catches, and actually get after them. And by doing so, again, we gave our pass rushers time to get home and pressure Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning to the tune of 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss. And then that brings us to the final component, the final element of why I think Georgia was so dominant defensively against this really, really good Texas offense. And again, they all work hand in hand. They're interrelated. They work in tandem here. And that was the dominant effort by the Georgia rush defense. So I've established for you, we played a lot more tighter press man coverage. Then the next logical question becomes, why did we feel comfortable in this game playing more of that type of coverage than we did against Mississippi State, than we did against Alabama to open that game? And a huge part of the answer to that question, I think the real answer to that question, is we were able to stop Texas's run game with even numbers in the box. Why is that important? Well, when we stop their run game with even numbers in the box, what does that mean? It allows us to play all game long with a too high safety shell. Why does that matter? Well, when you are able to play with a too high safety shell, what that means is both corners now have help over the top. You can play, but whether it's quarters coverage or it's two-man stuff, you now feel more comfortable putting Julian Humphrey in press man coverage, putting Dalen Everett in press man coverage. So even if they get beat over the top, you still have a safety back here to provide that help. If we were not able to stop the run with even numbers, you have to bring either Dan Jackson and or Malachi Starks into the box to stop the run. Now when you do that, you got a single high safety playing middle of the field close coverage. You cannot give help to both corners over the top. So now you're in a position like, man, now it's really risky. A lot more risky to play that tighter press man coverage. So what you're going to have to do is you play either a soft zone coverage, a cover 3 stuff where they're playing deep third, or you play a softer quarters coverage deal where they're playing that bail technique so they don't get beat over the top. So in order to play that tighter press man coverage, we had to be able to stop Texas's run game with even numbers in the box, which I felt we had a good chance to do in this game. I thought it was one of the keys. We talked about that last week on the preview episode, and we did it, man. And that, again, allowed us to play with that too high safety shell really all game long. And by doing that, we were able to play press man coverage. By playing press man coverage, we then allowed our pass rushers more time to get home. So we see how all three of these elements work together. Let's go ahead and run the tape here. So also, welcome back, Warren Brinson, playing zero tech here, just owning Jake Majors, who's a good center. We had a lot of success against him in this game. And I love this play right here. Because one thing is that Texas runs really well, which concerned me coming to this game. I love the matchups, but this is one matchup that kind of concerned me. They're a great outside zone running team. And think about what has given us trouble this year with the run game. It's outside run. The outside zone, even go back to last year, outside zone, perimeter run game at large tosses, screens, whatever. Getting the ball on the edges there has been tough for us. But we did a fantastic job of maintaining outside leverage here. And look at the versatility of Warren Brinson. This is why he's so important to get back on this roster. That last snap I showed you, he's playing zero tech on Jake Majors, extends on him, discards him, makes the play right there at the line of scrimmage. This play, he's out here playing with, I can't tell, it's a 5 tech or a 4-eye, but regardless, he's not playing zero tech. He's not playing nose guard. He's going to do a great job here of maintaining outside leverage. So it's Janelle Aguero right here, who's had a tough time at times this year, maintaining that outside leverage, keeping his outside shoulder free. But this time, he does a fantastic job. So for those of you who keep asking, is this Georgia team getting better? Are we just regressing? We're getting better. We're improving week by week, and this is an example of it. This is a great outside zone team. We do a fantastic job of maintaining outside leverage and forcing the ball back in to all of the pursuit from the inside and limiting this to basically nothing. Great job. Fantastic job all around there. Now, this is just a bust by Texas. Sometimes that happens, but point remains, tackle for loss. And on this last clip here, I love this clip. So they're trying to run outside zone to the right. But where is this play made? It's not made on the right side. Now, we were in good position here. We're maintaining outside leverage, and we're doing a great job here of Nas Stackhouse fighting across the face of Jake Majors, a center right here, doing a great job. But this play is being made by the backside end. The jack linebacker, Chaz Chandler, is crashing from the backside. So we're going to watch this from two angles. We're going to talk about why this was important in this game. It was a key to us being able to defend this run. Stop right there. Let's imagine this is Alabama, and this is not Quinn Ewers. This is Jalen Milroe. What happens when Chaz Chambliss and Jalen Walker both crash on the outside zone from the backside? Well, Jalen Milroe sees that, and he pulls it, and he scores. Explosive play. That happened a couple times against Alabama. We had really bad eye discipline. But when we play a team like Texas with a quarterback like Quinn Ewers, especially a guy that's coming off an oblique injury that we felt pretty confident was not going to be a part of their design run game, we did not pay any mind to him whatsoever. We were crashing on the back from the backside with reckless abandon, which is one of the reasons why we have so much success defending true like pocket passers like Quinn Ewers, and why sometimes dual threat quarterbacks give us issues, and why we have trouble not just defending their ability to run, but why does that open it up for everyone else in the run game? Because if this is Jalen Milroe in Alabama, Chaz Chambliss cannot crash. Let's run it back here. He can't crash on this. And if Chaz doesn't crash, so if this is Jalen Milroe, Chaz is surfing right here. He's doing like the surf. And that is going to create a cutback lane right here. So what would happen is if we don't crash, then there's going to be a cutback lane. He's going to plant his foot, get upfield right there, and that's a big gain. And that's all because of the threat that the quarterback run game poses. If we do crash like we did here, Jalen Milroe pulls that and goes around the edge. So that's one thing that does give me, like, if you think about who we have to play the rest of the season, we do have a lot of quarterbacks that can pull it and run, that are more athletic than Quinn Ewers. Even like DJ Lagway, he's not a true like dual threat guy, but he's athletic enough. We know what Jackson Dart can do. He's not a dynamic runner, but he's a willing runner, and they will run him. You go to Nico Imaliava at Tennessee, they don't use him a ton of their design QB run game. He's an athletic guy, and he does have the ability to pull the football. I mean, Haynes King at Georgia Tech, he's a glorified running back. So that's one thing to watch here. I still want us to be able to find an answer defending outside runs like this when we're facing a dual threat quarterback, because we're going to face those guys the rest of the way. So there you have it, guys. That's my take on how this Georgia defense was able to just straight up, flat out dominate a really good Texas offense. It's not that Texas's offense is not good. They're incredibly talented. That offensive line is unbelievably good. But we were able to dominate them for those three reasons that I just outlined there for you guys. But I do want to touch on one last thing here before I check out of here today. In the aftermath of that game, the immediate aftermath, that night, the next day, into Monday, into Tuesday, I've seen a lot of comments, whether it's on social media, message boards, things that have been sent to us, DM to us, sent to our inbox, emailed to us, a lot of comments that have kind of gone one of two ways. They've either gone A, exclaiming that yes, the Georgia defense is back, or B, lamenting the fact that the Georgia defense hasn't played like that all year. The question we kept getting is, where has that Georgia defense been all year? And guys, I get it. I appreciate all the comments, all the sentiments, all the questions that we got. I sincerely appreciate it. And I get where you're coming from. Trust me, I do. The Alabama game was a bad look. The second half of Mississippi State was incredibly frustrating. I about lost my mind inside Sanford Stadium a couple weeks ago. I couldn't sit down in the second half. I was so raging angry with how that second half was going and what we were doing defensively. So I get it. However, respectfully, I would push back slightly on the general premise. This idea that the Georgia defense hasn't been good all year. Like, where has this Georgia defense been? Oh, we're finally back. I would push back on that, guys. I don't think this Georgia defense went anywhere. I don't think this Georgia defense has been bad all year. I really don't. Was that the best performance we've seen from the Georgia defense all year? Yeah, probably. At least certainly since week 1 against Clemson. But I truly believe outside of one anomalous performance against Alabama, which, guys, it was bad. I'm not here to defend that performance. Gave almost 550 yards of offense, over 8 yards per play. That was as bad of a defensive performance that I've seen from a Georgia defense under Kirby Smart in the entire time the man has been here. That was unacceptable. It was a total defensive failure from the coaching staff with the defensive game plan to the execution on the field, the lack of ability to make plays on balls in the air, the eye discipline issues, the tackling issues. It was a total defensive failure, and I am not here to defend that. I understand and agree with you. That was a terrible defensive performance. But outside that one anomalous performance, and it still is, guys, to this point, through the first 7 games of the year, that's still the anomaly. Outside of that, I think this Georgia defense has been very good all year long. Let's not forget how quickly we forget sometimes, guys. Let's go all the way back to week 1. I know it seems like eons ago now, but it's 2 months ago. This Georgia defense that everyone apparently thought just disappeared, it hasn't been good all year, held Clemson to 188 yards of total offense and 3 total points. And I don't know if you've been paying attention to Clemson at all since that game. I know this is a Georgia podcast. I know you're Georgia fans. But if you've been paying even cursory attention to the Clemson team since that week 1 matchup, you know what that team's been doing. In particular, you know what that Clemson offense has been doing. It's night and day. They've been averaging 540 yards and 48.5 points per game in their 6 games since that week 1 matchup in Atlanta. Yeah, Bama was a really, really poor performance. I'm not here to defend that. That was terrible. But outside of that one performance, Georgia has not allowed more than 385 yards of total offense to any other team. We've held 4 of our 7 opponents to under 4 yards per play, which is elite, guys. 4 yards or less per play, that's out of this world elite. We're talking like top 3 in the country good. And oh, by the way, I would argue through the first 7 games of the year, Georgia's faced the toughest schedule in the country. Who's gone on the road and faced 2 top 5 teams? Who? Yeah, they don't exist, right? And played a Clemson team that I think is probably going to win the ACC. Certainly one of the 2 best teams in the ACC. So I know the numbers aren't quite what they've always been under Georgia if you go stat hunting. But man, it's a different context. It's a different era. It's a college football playoff era. This is a 16-team SEC. There's no divisions. The schedule this year has been a murderer's row. And we still have performed at a very high level outside of Alabama, not giving up more than 385 yards of offense. So I think what has happened here is that leading into the Texas game, everyone was kind of fixated on that really bad performance against Alabama, that god-awful performance. And I think that distorted the perception of what this Georgia defense is. I think that in the second half against Mississippi State, because no one respects them, I think that combination has really distorted, number one, what the Georgia defense has actually done all year, and then what this Georgia defense is and what it's capable of. But that's not, what we saw against Alabama, that's not who or what this Georgia defense is. No, that was the anomaly. That was a unique set of circumstances. And actually, the second half of the game, we figured it out. We had a horrible defensive game plan coming out in the first half. Second half, we started to play tighter press man coverage. We had played with better eye discipline. We were still aggressive, but not overly aggressive like we were in the first half. We were challenging throws in a way that we weren't in the first half. We basically gave teams the rest of the way the blueprint to defend Alabama, just like we did last year in the SEC title game. First half, terrible defensive game plan. Second half, made adjustments, great. Almost came back and won that football game. And then what did Michigan do? The next game, they take that game plan from our second half against Alabama and employ that for, an entire game and win that game and go on to win a fraudulent national championship. But what we have right now in the Georgia defense, guys, in my opinion, this is a really, really, really good defense with the potential to be an elite defense once we get fully healthy. And we're getting closer and closer and closer to that. This is a really good, borderline elite defense that just had a really bad night against Alabama. Now, does that mean that we should expect a Texas-esque performance every single week the rest of the season? No, not necessarily. But here's what I will say. I do think a lot of the things that we saw against Texas that allowed us to dominate that Texas offense, I think a lot of those factors that I went over with our film session, I think those are transferable to the other games the rest of the way. I mean, if you look at the natural pass rush, that was, again, the best offensive line that I think that we're going to play all year, at least through the regular season. We'll see what happens when and if, fingers crossed, we were able to get in the college football playoff. But through the regular season, that is clearly the best offensive line that we're going to play. And if we were able to pressure them the way that we were, now that Michael Williams is back healthy, now that TID's, he's feeling it now. He's got some experience out there. He hasn't played a ton the last couple of years because he's been dealing with injuries. Damon Wilson getting more experience. I was figuring out how to use Jalen Walker in different ways. Why can't we, I'm not going to say that we're going to have 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss every game the rest of the way, but why can't we have similar success rushing the passer the rest of the way? Why can't that be transferable? If we were able to do it against that Texas offensive line, why can't we do it against Florida? Why can't we do it against Ole Miss? Why can't we do it against Tennessee? I don't see a reason why we wouldn't be able to. And I think if you go back to the coverage standpoint, why can't we play tighter press man coverage on the outside? Who has receivers right now on our schedule that scare you to death? I think Trey Harris, Ole Miss, really good. But if we're able to stop their run game with even numbers, there's no Quinshot Junkins anymore, remember, right? If we can play a 2 high safety shell, we can still play some tighter press man coverage on the outside against Ole Miss. Tennessee is good offensively. They don't have those kind of receivers this year. They just don't. They didn't last year, and they, again, don't this year. Nico Imalialva hasn't been great, missing open guys on the field, but their receivers also are not a dynamic group of guys. Georgia Tech has a couple good guys. You can't forget about them. Florida has some good receivers, but they don't really challenge you much down the field. They do a lot in the short intermediate range, although DJ Lagway has a hell of an arm. He's pushing the ball vertically down the field in a way that Graham Mertz just wasn't really doing consistently, even going back to last year. So I do think playing tighter press man coverage and being able to stop the run with even numbers, I think both of those are also transferable the rest of the way. So again, I can't sit here and tell you I expect us to dominate every offense the way that we did that Texas offense over the weekend. But now I think we've seen what this defense is capable of once we get healthy. Now these younger guys, these inexperienced guys, are getting more experience. And at the very least, what I can say confidently is I fully expect this Georgia defense to continue to give this Georgia team a chance to win every single time they step out between the white lines. But all right, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, if you like this type of hardcore, in-depth Georgia football coverage, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Like the video, comment, and make sure to also check out the Glory UGA podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, for a whole lot more coverage of Georgia sports just like this. So thank you guys again. Appreciate you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.